Want to go to Chick-fil-A when I'm done?
Yes.
Okay. Hello my fellow bats, welcome back to my channel. For this video, we are going to be talking about a vampire story called The Fate of Madame Cabanel. It is written by Eliza Lynn Linton. So Eliza Lynn Linton. It was published in 1880. The story's kind of like sad, kind of like messed up. I guess it could be worse. So the story takes place a town in Brittany, France called, I know I'm gonna butcher this. It's called Pouvreau. So this town is made up of people who are referred to as ignorant, simple, superstitious, unenlightened by science, also lacking the luxuries of civilization. You can kind of get a feel for like what kind of people we're dealing with here. So that's great. So in said town, there is a man, and his name is Jules Cabanel. Okay, Monsieur Jules Cabanel. He kind of acts as like the link, right, between this little village and the outside world, so to speak, because his particular job or occupation, no, am I running out? His particular occupation often takes him out of town, so that's why, you know, he's kind of, and so sometimes he'll bring home like a bunch of like cool stuff, right? Like stuff they don't have in the village and they're like, what's that? When was this invented? That kind of thing. But in all of his 50 years, he's never been married. He's never been in a relationship. So he's been single for his whole life, basically. It's not that he's like ugly. He's just extraordinarily normal. Well, I shouldn't say extraordinarily. He's as normal as it gets, you know, like he's not like extra mean, he's not extra nice, he's just like normal. Like unremarkable, just ordinary, you know, just normal. So his household consists of himself, obviously, and he has a housekeeper. Her name is Adele, and she has a nephew/son. His name is Adolf. So the reason I say nephew/son, well, we'll get into it. Like the author says, like, or the narrator, I guess, says that Adolf is her nephew. But then she says something later that makes you kind of like, you're like, wait, I thought he was your nephew and now you're saying he's your son. So it's just like, kind of, it's weird. I don't know if it's like, if that was like a slip up or if it was part of, well, we'll get into it later, I guess. Okay, so one day in this small village, town, whatever, in Brittany, France, something unexpected happens. Mr. Cabanel, or I'm sorry, look, Monsieur, not Mr. Gosh. Jules comes back home with a wife. So her name is Fanny. So now she's Fanny, Madame Fanny Cabanel. But her first name's Fanny. And she's an orphan. She grew up as an orphan, and she used to be employed as a governess. But then like a bunch of stuff happened basically, and so she was out of a job, and so basically she married because she was on the point of, she was in poverty, but she was on the point of like destitution. Like she was about to be homeless, just on the streets, right? Just struggling just to survive, like so many back then. She doesn't lack integrity though, you know, through it. Like she is resolved to like do her best in the marriage and to try to love and just make the best of the situation, right? Because she's not trying to hate her life. So yeah, and she is very different from everyone in the village because the author makes a point of this. She has very plump white skin, so that means that she's been well fed. Like I said, she was on the point of poverty, like she was about to, you know, not be doing so well. But anyways, so, but she's compared to everyone in this small tiny village where nothing happens. Very white skin, very fair, nice blue eyes. Sorry, I have to concentrate when I contour my nose because I don't always do it well. She's also fairly young, like young enough, like not too young, but like the age difference between her and Jules is enough to to where he could basically like be her father. So that's the situation we're in. So she's nice and young, you know, and she has rosy cheeks and red lips, okay? So that's the visual that we have of her. So as time goes on, the differences between her and everyone else in the village are start to become more obvious and therefore more alarming for these village folk. Except for her husband, Monsieur Cabanel, of course, because he loves her, so yeah. I mean, he married her for a reason, right? So like for example, she doesn't speak French that well, so even though she would show up to mass on time, she couldn't read it's called something, but she couldn't read the books. She basically couldn't really participate all that well, at least not up to the villagers' standards. So yeah. Oh my gosh, it's not blending down here. Why? Also, another thing she did was she would often take strolls through the cemetery because the cemetery is the most beautiful area, the only beautiful area, in fact, in that whole town. And it was, you know, like, we know, right? Like, taking a stroll through the cemetery is nice. Like, it's quiet, it's peaceful. You don't have to deal with people. You don't have to deal with alive people. But of course, no one there did that. It's like the cemetery. It's like the one place no one went. So, of course, no one liked that she did that either. And they were all like, that's not cool. That's sketchy. And to make matters worse, after she arrives, not immediately after she arrives, but, you know, she's been there for a while. So soon after she arrives, there's like people start getting sick and dying. Like there's this, I don't know why I laughed, sorry. There's like this weird disease that's spreading, like one by one people are dying and they're just like kind of wasting away, like they're having the life sucked out of them. That's what it's compared to. That was like typical, and it does say in the story that it was pretty typical for, you know, French and English villages or people in these villages to get sick and die and all that, especially the children. So it makes a point of saying, hey, this is normal, but people are making a big deal out of it, especially Adele. She's like, nah, this ain't right. Speaking of Adele, the housekeeper, rumor has it that there's a little something going on between, what am I looking for? Between Adele and Jules, at least there was before Fanny got there, before Jules married. I don't know if I believe that. I don't know if that, I'd like to think that's not true, but because there isn't much evidence for it aside from what Adele herself exclaims, which we'll get into later, which is why the whole adolf thing is confusing. I don't know if I believe that, and the story, the author never makes that concrete and clear, you know. It would though explain, at least in part, why Adele is so freaking jealous of Fanny, which I'm sure you can imagine Adele after living with this man, like, it doesn't make it clear how long, but for quite some time. And then all of a sudden he brings home an English wife who looks so much better than you do. Like, yeah, she's insecure, she's jealous and envious of Fanny and her looks and her relationship with her own husband. So yeah, there's some cattiness going on. And she treats Fanny, as I'm sure you can imagine, quite hatefully. But Fanny is, she's just like too nice. I guess. I don't know if that's maybe not the right word. She has a easiness of temper, that's how it's described. To be too bothered by Adeles' treatment of her, which just only makes Adele more irritated. It was like no matter how hard Adele tried, I don't know why it's taking me so long to blend this. It's like no matter how hard Adele tried to make Fanny hurt as much as she, or make Fanny feel as bad and insecure as she did, it wouldn't work, because Fanny was just like too nice, too oblivious, just too kind-hearted, all of those things, right? So eventually, one night, Adele is fed up with all of this, and she also wants answers as to why there's this sickness going around, right? Oh, I forgot powder. Wow. So Adele decides to go see this man called Martin, what's his last name? Briolic. Yep. To try and figure out what's going on and how to fix it, if there's anything she can do about her situation and the situation that the village is in with this disease spreading. Now Martin is the grave digger, okay? And not only is he the grave digger, he has this reputation of being the wisest person in this town, in this village, or quote unquote wisest. He knows a lot about herbs and how to use them, what they're useful for. He interprets the stars and the sky. They mean all these different things, stuff like that. And he also uses tarot cards. Adele goes to visit him to try and get answers, and so Martin whips out his tarot cards as I'm sure you can guess. He says that according to the tarot cards and everything that's been going on, Madame Cabanel is a vampire, and she is the reason for everything that's going on. She is the reason for this disease that's going around. So Martin and Adele decide together that once they get like quote unquote proof, like they're like, we'll wait and see kind of thing, of the fact, or of their theory that Madame Cabanel is a vampire, then they're gonna kill her. They're gonna kill her by throwing her into a pit that is in the forest next to their little town. Now I don't know what kind of pit this is, what kind of pit it's supposed to be, for it to, well, I don't know, maybe I'm just underestimating pits. But I'm like, okay, that's one way to kill a person, I guess, throwing them into a pit. Okay. For the next few days ish or so, or we don't actually know how long exactly, but they start spreading, well, not spreading rumors, but they're just like starting to talk to people about it, right? They're planting little seeds everywhere about, you know, suggesting to everyone, trying to convince everyone that that Madame Cabanel is a vampire and we need to do something about it. Like, hey, she's the one who is responsible for all of this that's happening to us. We might have to do something about it. The mob mentality gets so bad to where, like, they're ready to accuse of atheism and immorality anyone who had doubted their decision. Because they came to the decision that, yeah, Madame Cabanel is a vampire and we should definitely probably kill her somehow. So during this time, or by this time, I guess, Adolf and Jules, back at the house, they're now sick themselves and they're getting weaker, more so Adolf because he's a child than Jules, but Jules is sick too. And so the doctor that they've had, you know, coming to visit and look at them and everything, he secretly suggests to Adele that he thinks that Fanny, Madame Cabanel, is secretly poisoning the two of them. So of course, this just makes things like worse. Like, And if anything, it just like confirms it justifies Adeles' dislike of Fanny. Of course, Fanny isn't actually doing this, but you know, Adele doesn't know that. She doesn't want to believe that. She probably doesn't even want to believe that, so. So then, as I'm sure you can imagine, Adele starts, like, get in there, I guess, with Monsieur Cabanel, and try to convince him, hey, your wife is poisoning you and my son/nephew. And you need to do something about it. And he kind of, it's weird. He seems to be a fickle person because he holds out for a little bit, so kudos to him. But eventually he does, you know, start to believe her. But then, like, you know, Fanny manages to convince him otherwise, and he's like, okay, yeah, you're not trying to poison me. So it's weird, but whatever. And then, of course, as I'm sure you can imagine, tensions are at their highest point between Adele and Fanny. And Fanny is still just, like, oblivious, right? Like, she still does not understand what's going on and why Adele hates her so much. She just thinks it's because, in her head, she's just like, oh, wow, the French just really hate the English. Literally, that's what she thinks. Adele won't let her help around the house anymore, and she won't let her help with her son anymore. So, yeah, and like I said, Fanny just isn't getting it. So with tensions where they're at, it didn't help that eventually Jules he got called away on some urgent business, so he was going to be gone for a couple days. So this leaves Fanny in the middle of a village in a house surrounded by enemies, basically. Like, she has no friends here, and like everyone hates her, and she's still just whoop. Like, whatever. It's like I have mixed feelings about that. So on the night that Monsieur Cabanel is supposed to return from his business trip, Adele goes out to go do something. It's not clear what that is, but basically she leaves the house. And this leaves Adolf, Fanny, and the other housemaid in the house, leaves them alone in the house altogether. And poor Adolf, he's like struggling, right? Crying, just like dying. And Fanny, being the loving, like her motherly nature comes out, and she wants to, you know, help take care of him. And the other housemaid, she's freaking out. She doesn't really know what to do because Adolf is kind of having like a coughing fit, right? And she doesn't really know what to do. She doesn't know how to console him. So she's like, yeah, here, take him, whatever. Just make him stop crying, and just, also, we don't know, I don't think we know how old Adolf is. But he's a child. He's not a baby. He's not a toddler. So maybe, I don't know, like 5 or 7. Is 5 a toddler? And so Fanny's holding him and cradling him, and she's singing nursery songs to him and stuff like that. You know, things you would do to help soothe the child back then. Adolf actually ends up having a seizure, which sucks. So during that seizure, oh my gosh, this eye looks so bad. During that seizure, Adolf actually ends up biting his lip. So there's, you know, some blood there. And I'm sure you can imagine where this is going. So, you know, Fanny's sitting there singing to him, trying to comfort him, all that stuff. And so she bends down to kiss him. And she just so happens to bend down to kiss him where the blood is. So some of the blood gets on her. So that looks great, right? So, and right at that moment, of course, because this is how things happen, right at that moment, what's her name? Adele, Martin, and some other villagers burst through the door. And they see this happening, right? From what it looks like to them, it looks like Fanny is literally drinking the blood of her child, of Adele's child. So of course they're freaking out. They're like, hold up. They're like, see, we told y'all she's a vampire. This confirms it. This confirms everything. And so Fanny's like, hold up, what y'all talking about? What's wrong with y'all? I've been nothing but nice. All this stuff. Like, what's the reason for your guys' craziness? What did she say? Oh yeah, she's like, what have I done to any of you for y'all to treat me like this? So her eyes are finally open. Only took that long, right? Anyways, so yeah, she's like, what have I done to deserve this? And so eventually it gets to the point where she's like, you know what, I can't condescend to answer y'all, because she calls it folly. She's like, are you men or children? And they're like, oh, we're men, and men protect their weak. And the whole time you're just like, oh my gosh, please stop. Because clearly you're wrong. So they actually end up tying up and gagging Fanny right there in her house in front of all these people. Well, all these people are doing it, but you know. They tie her up, like tie her hands behind her back and gag her. And they start carrying her out to the forest to where that pit is. Like, it's a big dark forest, right? You got this angry mob with their torches literally carrying this poor English woman out into the middle of the woods to kill her, okay? That's just freaky and wrong and messed up. So eventually they get to the spot, right, like the pit or whatever, and they lower her onto the ground to get ready to like kind of push her off, like throw her in or whatever. But they realize that she's freaking dead, dude. Like, she died on the way there, whether it's from a heart attack or suffocation because of how they gagged her, or what was it, they were pretty rough with her too. You know, the people who were carrying Fanny, they're like, dude, she's dead. And Adeles like, what do you mean? There's no way. Vampires can't die. And then Martin, the wise one, he says, a vampire cannot die unless the evil spirits take her, or she is buried with a stake thrust through her body. Like, okay, so if you're saying that, then why are you doing all of this? Why would you conspire to throw her into a pit if that's even not technically the right way to kill her if she is a vampire? Crazy people, crazy people. Oh my gosh. So as I'm sure you can imagine, some people start to like doubt what they're doing, right? They start to doubt, like, this woman must not actually be a vampire then. Probably for the same reasons, because it's like, well, if that's how you kill a vampire, then why are we doing this? You know? So some of them start doubting, and then all of a sudden they hear horses' hooves, like horses. They hear horses coming at them from like further out in the forest. So this freaks most of them out, and they just kind of like scatter, and only Adeles and Martin are left. And Adeles, this girl, is just like too proud of what she's done to leave. And then Martin, I don't know, he probably just wants to see this through. He probably just wants to see what's gonna happen, right? So it turns out the people on the horses were Monsieur Jules Cabanel, the doctor, and then 4 guards. So it doesn't really give an explanation as to why Monsieur Cabanel came back with the doctor and the guards. Like, maybe he came back with the doctor, like, stopped by his house, saw that no one was there, no one was really in the village, and he was freaking out. He went to go grab guards or something. I don't know. It's not really clear. So, of course, when Jules sees that his wife is dead, he's just, like, heartbroken. And he's like, oh my gosh, what just happened, right? And he calls everyone involved worse than beasts. Like, that's how much he feels about it, which is valid because that's his wife. But, you know, I just thought that was convicting. So all these things that Jules is saying and that he feels, all his exclamations and stuff like that, kind of grabs Adeles' attention, right? Because she's like, hold up. You don't, I'm sorry, did you not, like, see what she was doing? Like, do you not care? And this is where it gets confusing, because she says, and is there no vengeance for our child? And then he's like, would you revenge yourself on God, woman? So, yeah, that's why I say that Adolf is her nephew slash son, because the narrator says that he's her nephew, but then right here she says, is there no vengeance for our child, implying that Adolf is Adele and Jules's son out of wedlock or whatever. Wow, I just screwed up my makeup real bad. Y'all see that? Whoops. So everything that Jules is saying is like kind of like Adele's obviously shocked, and then she like feels hopeless, like she did everything she did for like no reason basically, and she actually ends up throwing herself over the side and falling into that pit. So she ends up taking her own life basically. I don't know why I laughed, I'm sorry, that's not funny, but you know, she ends up taking her own life. And then Martin, this little worm, okay, this guy, he throws his hands up after this happens. He obviously, he doesn't care. He doesn't give two pennies. So he throws his hands up and he's like, y'all can't prove anything. You can't prove that I'm involved in this. Y'all can't prove that I did anything. And they're just like, screw you, we're taking you in anyways, we're putting you in jail. And they throw him in jail, and he has like this attitude of like a martyr, like he thinks he's a martyr by this happening and them throwing him in jail for him trying to supposedly like stop a vampire, right? Which is just, well, it's ridiculous in my opinion. Like, really, come on. And after all this happened, all the other villagers who were involved, they kind of like regret their involvement, and they're like, man, they doubted the righteousness of what they did, which just makes me laugh. But yeah, they're like, man, we were wrong. We should have just, you know, left everything up to the law, you know, and like how things are normally done. Like, we shouldn't have taken the law into our own hands, basically. So that is the story of Madame Cabanel, or that is the fate of Madame Cabanel. But before you go, please, let's just talk about this author, okay? Because for those of you who don't know, Eliza is actually anti-feminist, okay? So reading this story, well, there's a lot about her, okay? So she is like kind of, or was, I guess, agnostic. She believed that, she didn't believe in God, but she did believe that there is something out there, right? In, like, you know, there was something out there because there are things that can't be explained. But she was also for a little bit interested in the occult and spiritualism, which was hot back then, and all of that. But the thing is, this just makes me laugh, like, it makes me laugh. So she eventually, though, became a skeptic of spiritualism and all that, after having a few experiences with frauds, which I just think is hilarious. She kind of goes like back and forth on that, and even in terms of feminism, she does like sympathize with feminists, but she, especially in her earlier years, she was very vocal about being anti-feminist. So that's why when I was doing my research for the story, I was like, well, what the heck? Because I don't know. So I'm trying to figure out how anti-feminism fits into this story, you know? And like, why would she write this in the first place? Because when you read it, considering that, right, then it's like, well, who's the feminist in this story and who's the anti-feminist? Or like, who represents what, you know? I hope I'm making sense. Or maybe I'm just like thinking too much about this, but after reading vampire stories, I love to read about the author, what they believed, and just try to figure out meanings behind things and like, why did this person write this? Does that make sense? So maybe Adele represents feminists, right? And Madame Cabanel represents anti-feminists, or like women who are trying to keep things the way they are, basically, or who are just, you know, not feminists, like the old way of doing things, stuff like that. But then you can kind of see, that sympathy in there, and where the occult and spiritualism stuff comes in too. And you can also see the skepticism there, because it's like the one person who was involved in all that was seen as the wisest, yet they're wrong, you know? You see what I'm saying? And the author passes like all this judgment on them. For even like the villagers, the author or the narrator, what does she say? They took all the unknown not as magnificent but as diabolical. So it's like there's like this tension of trying to figure out what the unknown means, what it is, if it's evil, like all that stuff, right? Alright, that is the fate of Madame Cabanel. Let me know what you think in terms of the whole anti-feminist thing, the aspect in there. Let me know whether or not you think Madame Cabanel actually was a vampire. Again, like I said, I personally don't think that she actually was a vampire, but you know. If you guys have any vampire story requests, leave them down below for me, and I will be sure to get to those soon. Other than that, I will see you guys in my next... I almost said my next episode. Oh my gosh. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.